All right, let's dive into this one. We're looking at a pretty interesting climate education curriculum that's about to, well, could make some waves.
Yeah, definitely has the potential.
It was developed by the Pakistan Teachers Resource Center,
Oh, okay.
which is an educational NGO in Pakistan,
Okay.
with support from the U.S. consulate in Karachi.
Interesting.
So kind of some big players there. The exciting part, it's ready to be integrated into Pakistan's national curriculum. Now, we all know how, curriculum updates can go sometimes, so we'll see when the educational authorities actually make it happen. But just imagine the impact if they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's really interesting here, and maybe you can speak to this a bit, is that it's not just like a stack of facts about melting glaciers.
Right, right.
This curriculum actually emphasizes a holistic approach.
Uh-huh.
Knowledge, skills, and attitudes.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me when I was looking at this curriculum. It's not just about, cramming kids' heads full of facts and figures. It's really about trying to equip them to be problem solvers
Yeah.
when it comes to climate change.
Yeah, and they're not shying away from making it relevant to Pakistani students' lives,
Yeah.
right? We're not just talking about polar bears here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole section on calculating the economic impact of climate change on local businesses, like sixth graders learning how climate change could affect their family's livelihood.
Right. And that's such a smart move, I think, because, by that age, they're starting to understand, these bigger concepts, the economy, money,
Exactly.
jobs, and, I think it really brings it home for them,
Totally.
It's not just some abstract, far-off problem.
Exactly. And, speaking of bringing it home, by sixth grade, they're expected to be able to, model a local ecosystem
Oh, wow.
and identify potential disruptions caused by climate change,
But-
even get to debate policy solutions.
Oh, really?
That's things you
We're
found.
talking about building a generation of informed citizens, not just, passive test takers.
I love that. And speaking of, taking action, get this. They're suggesting things like green classroom certification.
Right.
I'm picturing solar panels on school rooftops, kids composting lunch waste. It's about making sustainability tangible,
Yeah.
not just a concept in a textbook.
Right.
Now, when I was reading through all of this, something that really jumped out at me was, the emphasis on teacher training. A brilliant curriculum is useless if the teachers don't know how to use it, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can have the most amazing, cutting-edge, curriculum in the world,
Yeah.
but if the teachers aren't, equipped to teach it, it's going to fall flat.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that they recognize that in this curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, they're actually recommending 40 hours of professional development. That's a serious commitment.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I mean, you can't just hand teachers a new curriculum
Mhm.
and expect them to, magically know how to implement it.
Right. It's a whole new way of thinking, a new pedagogy.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of understanding, I think one of the things that could really help us understand this curriculum is we've got some quotes from the document itself that I think you'll find pretty powerful.
Ooh. Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear it.
Okay, so there's this young climate activist.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Yusuf Baluch.
Okay.
He talks about the impact of droughts in Balochistan. And he says, and I quote, "Many people are dying because of these disasters. Animals are dying too because of extremely hot temperatures, and droughts are displacing indigenous communities of Balochistan."
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
And, hearing it straight from a young person living through it, it really hits hard,
Mhm.
really underscores the urgency of this situation.
Right. It's not some abstract future problem for these kids. It's their reality.
Hmm.
And then there's Sabiha Zaman.
Okay.
She's a field activist with WWF Pakistan.
Okay, yeah.
And she talks about the time it takes for a tree to grow
Mm-hmm.
versus how quickly it can be cut down.
Right.
And she says, "It may take 50 years for a tree to become big and sturdy, but humans cut it down within minutes."
Yeah. It's a stark reminder
Yeah.
of the imbalance we've created
Hmm.
and how crucial sustainable practices are.
Yeah.
It's not just about, reducing our carbon footprint. It's about, respecting the natural world and understanding these, these timescales, these natural timescales.
And it's interesting how these quotes, they're not just sprinkled in.
Right.
They're actually woven into the lesson plans.
That's great.
And they encourage the students to connect with these real world experiences.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important.
Okay, so I think we get a sense of like the curriculum's approach. We see the urgency behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But, why should someone outside of Pakistan care? Like, why is this important for anyone interested in climate education?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, I mean, Pakistan is one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change. So what these students learn could quite literally shape their country's future.
Hmm.
It's about survival, but it's also about opportunity. I mean, by equipping young people with the knowledge and skills to tackle climate change, Pakistan is investing in its future leaders and innovators. It's a model for how other countries can and should be approaching this.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, we're not just going to be victims of climate change. We're going to be the ones solving it.
Exactly.
It's inspiring, but it also makes you wonder, like, do they have the resources to pull this off?
Right.
Especially in rural areas where schools are already struggling.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the curriculum does advocate for things like solar power installation and rainwater harvesting for schools, but whether those things actually happen,
It's another story.
yeah, it's a whole other ballgame. It all comes down to funding and political will.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think maybe it makes sense now to unpack how this curriculum unfolds across different grade levels.
No, okay, yeah, let's get into that.
Because it's kind of cleverly scaffolded.
Right.
Like it starts with foundational concepts in the early grades and then tackles more complex issues as students mature. It kind of recognizes that you can't teach a first grader the same way you teach a high school senior.
Absolutely. Developmentally appropriate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what are some examples of what they're actually learning at different stages?
Okay, so in the early grades, they really focus on building awareness and appreciation for the natural world.
Okay.
They might learn about basic weather patterns, the different seasons, the importance of clean air and water.
Mm-hmm.
They even have them create these little eco plays, which I thought was so cute,
Really?
to act out different environmental scenarios, just, really getting them engaged and thinking about these issues in a creative way.
Okay, so building those foundational blocks with hands-on activity. I like it. What about middle school?
All right, so middle school, things get a little more serious, I guess you could say. They delve into the science of climate change.
Okay.
Greenhouse gases, the carbon cycle, the impact of human activities. They even have them calculating their own carbon footprints, which I think is pretty cool.
That's impressive.
Yeah, but, it's not all doom and gloom. They also start exploring solutions like renewable energy and conservation. So it's about giving them a sense of hope and agency.
So they're getting into like the how of
Yeah.
tackling the problem. I'm guessing high schools where they like go full on policy wonk.
You got it. In the higher grades, they're looking at complex issues like climate justice, the economics of sustainability, the role of international cooperation. They're even analyzing case studies of successful climate action projects from around the world.
Wow, they're really covering a lot of ground. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
But I have to ask, how do they make sure students are actually learning all this stuff? Like, what's their approach to assessment?
That's a great question. And, it's something the curriculum is very mindful of. Assessment is integrated into the learning process itself.
Mm-hmm.
And they encourage a variety of methods.
Okay.
Project-based assessments, presentations, debates, even self and peer assessment. It's not just about end-of-term exams. It's about ongoing evaluation, really making sure the students are grasping the concept.
Yeah, that's a much more holistic approach than just like rote memorization.
Absolutely.
But let's be real. A curriculum is only as good as the teachers who implement it. How does this one address the elephant in the classroom, so to speak?
That's a great point. And they actually dedicate a whole section to the role of teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They emphasize the importance of teacher training and professional development,
Yeah.
equipping educators with the knowledge, skills, and resources they need to confidently teach about climate change.
It's about supporting them every step of the way, which makes sense.
That-
You can't expect teachers to teach what they don't understand themselves.
Yeah.
Speaking of understanding, I think to really get a feel for this curriculum,
Yeah.
we got to dive into some of the specific activities and learning outcomes that really make it stand out.
Let's do it. I'm excited to hear more.
Because we've only scratched the surface of what makes this curriculum so unique.
Okay, so you want to dive into some of the some specific activities?
Yeah, let's talk about like what are kids actually doing?
Right, right. Okay, so I'm seeing one for 5th grade
Mm-hmm.
where they have students build mini ecosystems
Oh,
in recycled bottles,
okay.
like a tiny forest,
Yeah.
a desert, even a mini ocean.
That's such a clever way to teach about biodiversity and like interdependence.
Yeah.
Kids love building stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
What about like high school? Do they get to do anything besides write essays?
Oh, they definitely don't shy away from hands-on learning.
Okay.
Even for the older students, there's one activity where they simulate a disaster response scenario.
Oh, wow.
Students have to work together to figure out how to evacuate a community, distribute aid, and deal with the aftermath of a climate-related disaster.
Whoa.
Talk about real-world application.
That sounds intense. But I guess that's the reality for a lot of people in Pakistan, given its vulnerability to floods and droughts.
Absolutely.
It's not just a theoretical exercise.
Right, and it gets them thinking critically about the social and economic impacts of climate change, not just the environmental ones.
Yeah.
They even have an activity where students design, eco-friendly businesses.
Yeah.
Like developing a plan for a solar-powered food cart.
Okay.
Or a sustainable clothing line.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, hey, you can be part of the solution and make a living doing it.
Right.
That's a powerful message.
Absolutely.
Especially for young people who are, trying to figure out their place in the world.
It's all about, fostering that sense of agency.
Yeah.
Showing them they can create positive change and build a green future.
Okay, this curriculum is blowing my mind.
I know, right? It's pretty impressive.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about pedagogy.
Right.
Like, how do they suggest teachers actually teach this complex subject matter?
Well, one of the key pedagogical principles is, you guessed it, interdisciplinarity.
Okay.
The curriculum encourages teachers to break down the silos between subjects and show students how climate change is woven into everything.
I like that.
We're talking science and math, sure, but also history, geography, even the arts.
Yeah, it's about making those connections.
Absolutely.
Showing students that climate change isn't just a science lesson.
Right?
It's something that impacts every aspect of their lives and their futures.
It's a lens through which to view the world, really.
Totally.
Yeah.
What are some of the other, pedagogical approaches they recommend?
They're big on active learning.
Okay.
Encouraging teachers to move away from lectures.
Yeah.
Get students actively involved in a learning process. So, what does that look like?
Inquiry-based learning.
Okay.
Project-based learning, problem-based learning. They even suggest incorporating outdoor activities and field trips whenever possible.
It's about making the students the drivers of their own learning.
Exactly.
Not just passive recipients of information.
Right.
But I have to ask, climate change is a heavy topic. It can evoke anxiety, even despair, especially in young people.
Absolutely.
How does this curriculum address that, emotional side?
That's a great question, and it's something they're very mindful of.
Okay.
The curriculum acknowledges that climate change can be emotionally challenging
Yeah.
and encourages teachers to create a safe and supportive space for students to express their feelings and concerns.
Yeah.
It's not about sugarcoating the issue,
Right.
but giving them the tools
Yeah.
to process those difficult emotions.
So it's not just about the facts and figures.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the human side of climate change.
The fears and hopes that come with it.
Absolutely. And they don't stop there.
All right.
They also emphasize fostering hope and agency,
Yeah.
showing students they have the power to make a difference, that even small actions can have a ripple effect.
I like that.
It's about channeling that anxiety into action.
Okay, I love that. Turn that fear into fuel, right?
Exactly.
But let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
What might some of these lessons actually look like
All right.
in practice?
So let's start with the early grades.
Okay.
For a first grade class,
Mm-hmm.
they suggest beginning with something concrete and relatable.
Okay.
The weather.
Yeah.
Students might observe the weather outside each day, keeping track of things like temperature, sunshine, rain, and wind.
Okay.
They can draw pictures, write simple sentences, or even create charts and graphs.
Sounds like a fun and engaging way to introduce basic scientific concepts.
Right.
Get them observing the world around them.
Exactly. And from there, they can start exploring the different seasons.
And how they impact the natural world. Reading stories about animals migrating, plants changing colors, or people wearing different clothes depending on the weather. All about making those connections between the science and their own lived experiences.
That's clever. So I'm guessing as they move into the later elementary grades, things start to get a little more, shall we say, complex?
Absolutely. One suggestion is to have students explore the concept of interdependence,
Okay.
both within ecosystems and between humans and the natural world. They might create food webs to show how different organisms rely on each other.
Okay.
Or investigate the impact of human activities on different habitats.
Yeah.
It's about helping them see the interconnectedness of everything.
Right.
And that our actions have consequences.
They're starting to see the big picture, like the web of life and how it all connects.
Exactly.
So middle school, how do they tackle climate change with students who are, starting to grasp more abstract concepts? This is where they really start to dive into the science of climate change, learning about the greenhouse effect, exploring how certain gases trap heat and warm the planet.
Yeah.
They might even do experiments to demonstrate this.
Oh, cool.
Like creating a mini greenhouse
Okay.
and observing temperature changes.
Bringing the science to life.
Right.
I bet that's way more engaging than just reading about it in a textbook.
You bet. And it's not just about the science. They also start to explore the social and economic impacts of climate change.
Okay.
Researching how different communities around the world are being affected.
Yeah.
Or investigating the costs and benefits of solutions like renewable energy or adapting to sea level rise.
So they're starting to see climate change isn't just a scientific issue.
Right.
But like a social, economic, and political one as well?
Exactly.
They're getting a taste of the complexity of the problem.
Exactly. And it's about encouraging them to think critically about those complex issues and start forming their own opinions and solutions.
Okay, now I'm really curious about the high school level.
All right, high school.
What kinds of activities and discussions are like going down in those classrooms?
Well, one suggestion is to have students analyze case studies of different climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies from around the world. They might research projects like renewable energy installations, sustainable agriculture practices, or community-based disaster preparedness plans.
So they're seeing real-world solutions in action,
Right.
Things that are actually working.
Exactly. And it's about encouraging them to think about what might be applicable in their own communities. Beyond that, they might also delve into the ethical and political dimensions of climate change, debating different policy approaches, analyzing international agreements, or exploring the concept of climate justice.
Wow, they're really grappling with the big questions.
They are.
Preparing them to be informed and engaged citizens.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this curriculum so unique and so powerful.
It really is remarkable.
It is.
But let's be real. A curriculum is only as good as its. How do we know it's actually working?
Right.
How are they measuring whether students are learning all this stuff? The assessment piece.
The assessment piece, it's not an afterthought here.
Okay, good.
They advocate for a multifaceted approach, using a variety of methods to gauge student understanding.
So not just your typical multiple choice tests.
Definitely not.
Okay, good.
They suggest using things like project-based assessments, presentations, debates, even self and peer assessment, giving students more agency in the learning process and showcasing their understanding in meaningful ways.
I love that.
Yeah.
But can you give me some specific examples?
Sure.
Like what might these assessments actually look like?
Okay, picture this. An elementary school class is tasked with creating a poster or diorama illustrating how climate change impacts their local community.
Okay.
They could draw pictures, write captions, or even use recycled materials to build a 3D model.
So like a hands-on project.
Exactly.
Okay.
What a creative way to assess their understanding of the local impacts.
Gets them thinking about their own backyards.
Right. And in middle school, imagine students designing a community-based project to address a specific climate change challenge. They would research solutions, develop a budget and timeline, and present their proposal to a panel of experts.
Like what kind of experts?
Like teachers or even community members.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's real-world problem solving. What about at the high school level?
High school.
Are they writing a dissertation on climate policy by this point?
Haha, not quite.
Okay.
But they might write a persuasive essay or deliver a speech on a specific climate change policy or issue. This could involve researching different perspectives, formulating arguments, and even participating in debates or mock trials.
So it's about honing those crucial critical thinking and communication skills, which are essential for any field, really.
Absolutely.
But all this talk about students and assessments,
right?
What about the schools themselves?
Yeah.
What role do they play in all of this?
They are absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
The curriculum emphasizes that schools need to go beyond just teaching about climate change.
Hmm.
They need to model sustainable practices
Okay.
and create a culture of environmental responsibility
Yeah.
throughout the school community.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. But what does that look like in practice?
They suggest a number of concrete actions schools can take.
Okay.
A big focus is on resource conservation,
Okay.
implementing energy-saving measures,
Uh-huh.
water conservation programs,
Hmm.
and waste reduction initiatives.
Basically reducing their own environmental footprint,
Right.
leading by example.
Precisely. And they suggest involving students in these efforts.
Okay.
Having students conduct energy audits or design recycling programs.
So it's another opportunity for hands-on learning,
Exactly.
but this time they're making a real impact
Right.
on their own school environment.
Exactly. And beyond resource conservation,
Okay.
they also encourage schools to incorporate sustainability into their facilities and operations.
Like what kind of things are we talking about?
Installing solar panels,
Okay.
using eco-friendly cleaning products,
Mm-hmm.
creating school gardens.
So sustainability becomes a visible and tangible part of the school environment.
Yes. And perhaps even more importantly,
Yeah.
they stress creating a culture of environmental awareness and responsibility,
Okay.
organizing school-wide events and campaigns,
Mm-hmm.
integrating sustainability into various subjects,
Yeah.
partnering with local organizations.
It's about making sustainability a core value of the school.
Right. It's not just about teaching students about climate change. It's about embedding those values and practices
Mm.
into the very fabric of the school community,
Yeah.
and that creates a much more powerful and lasting impact.
Well said. We've covered so much ground here.
I know, right?
But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to come back to something we touched on earlier,
Mhm.
the importance of hope.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
It's something that really stands out about this curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it acknowledges the challenges
Yeah.
of climate change,
Right.
but it also offers a powerful message
Mm-hmm.
of hope and empowerment.
It's showing students that they have the power to be part of the solution,
Absolutely.
not just passive bystanders to this global crisis.
Right, and despair can be paralyzing,
Yeah.
making people feel like there's no point in even trying.
Mm-hmm.
But this curriculum offers a different perspective.
It shows them there are people all over the world working on this.
Yes.
That even small actions can ripple outwards.
Exactly. It's about nurturing a sense of possibility,
Yeah.
not just a sense of doom.
Mm-hmm.
Reminding them the future isn't preordained.
Yeah.
They have the power to shape it.
That's a message we all need to hear no matter where we are in the world.
I agree.
But I'm curious to hear what our listener thinks about all of this.
Yeah.
What stands out to you?
Mhm.
What's resonating?
And what connections have you made
Yeah.
to your own life, your community,
Yeah.
the world around you? We'd love to hear your perspective.
So we've been unpacking this incredible climate education curriculum from Pakistan. And it's like really got me thinking about the power of education. I mean, just imagine if this kind of curriculum was like adopted globally,
Oh, yeah.
What kind of world could we create if every young person had access to this kind of holistic and empowering, climate change education?
Oh, that's a great question. The ripple effects would be, immense. We could see a generation emerge that's not just aware of the climate crisis, but equipped to tackle it head on with, the knowledge, the skills, and yes, even the optimism to drive real change.
I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that we have the tools, right, to address this crisis,
Yeah.
but we need to empower people, especially young people, to use them.
Yeah, totally. And that's where education comes in, right? This curriculum isn't just about teaching kids about climate change. It's about cultivating a generation of climate leaders, innovators, problem solvers.
It's like they're saying, hey, the future's in your hands.
Yeah.
And here's the toolkit you need to build a better one.
Exactly.
And the face part is it's not just theoretical. They're actually out there doing it in Pakistan. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's a real world example of how we can turn climate anxiety into climate action.
Yeah,
And that's a message that resonates far beyond Pakistan's borders.
absolutely. It gives me hope knowing that there are educators and activists, all over the world working towards this vision of a climate literate, climate active generation.
Me too. And it reinforces how crucial it is to support initiatives like this one. you know,
Yeah.
both in our own communities and globally. Every effort, no matter how small, it contributes to creating a more sustainable and just world.
Speaking of support, before we sign off, a quick note. This deep dive into the climate education curriculum was brought to you by Climate Action Skills, an online climate change academy in Pakistan.
Oh, very cool.
They're doing amazing work empowering people to be climate champions, so check them out if you want to learn more.
Yeah, that's a great example of the kind of positive action we're talking about.
Absolutely. But before we go, we always like to kind of turn the conversation over to you, our listener. What stood out to you the most from this deep dive? What sparked your curiosity?
Yeah, what resonated with you?
What connections have you made to your own life, your community, or the world around you?
Yeah, we're all ears.
And as you reflect on what you've learned, we want to challenge you to take that knowledge and turn it into action.
Mm.
What's one small step you can take today to be a climate champion?
Mm.
Maybe it's reducing your own environmental footprint. Maybe it's advocating for change in your community. Or simply spreading awareness about this crucial issue.
Remember, every action, no matter how small, it ripples outwards.
So let's create those ripples together.
Mm.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of climate change education. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
And remember, the future is in our hands. Let's make it a good one.